The Call of Science. Written and read by D.G. Chichester.
"It's extraordinary," Calvin Dixon exclaimed. "I certainly never expected to find such a well-appointed laboratory, especially not an AirBNB." "I wish I could take credit," said Sandra Cole. A wistful smile played at her lips as she gave herself a moment to glance across the collection of beakers, burners, chemicals, computers, soldering irons, circuitry that stood at the ready on the workbenches arranged across the space. "This is my husband's space. His happy place. Was it originally a greenhouse?" Calvin glanced up at the panes of glass across much of the ceiling, sunlight pouring through, sparkling off the technology's chrome and setting test tubes to glow. He held his hands into the direct beam of light, marveling at the sensation, or lack of it. "Curious, I'd expect that to be rather hot. Instead, nothing." "Oh, Max, he figured a way to treat them so the space would stay cool," Sandra said. "One of his side projects." "If altering thermodynamics qualifies as a side project, his main focus must be truly extraordinary," Calvin said. "I'm sure I'd love to meet him. Is he working remotely?" "He passed," Sandra said. Her smile faltered. As she now looked around the lab, she allowed herself to feel the loss of the man, felt him slipping out of the surroundings, just as he had finally slipped out of her life. "My condolences." "Was it sudden?" Calvin noticed for the first time how some of the workbenches hosted what appeared to be experiments in progress. "Not so much. But he kept on as long as he could. 'Science calls,' he'd say. I guess we ignored it. And when he left, I was left with a lot to handle, including the bills. Which is where AirBNB comes in handy. I hope the cot is comfortable. It's all that's out here." Calvin patted the surface of the military-style cot, the wool blanket on top, the overstuffed pillow at the head. "Fine by me." His gaze returned to the robust makerspace he found himself in. "I don't know that I want much sleep anyway, not with all this." "What kind of work do you do, Mr. Dixon?" "Nothing as advanced as your husband's," Calvin said. "I make toys, technology toys." He opened a long metal case he'd brought in with him and proudly showed her the slender metal pieces inside, joined by wires and gears. To Sandra, it looked like a very modern-day erector set. She thought Max would have enjoyed this young man. "Science calls," Calvin said. "Science calls," Sandra agreed. Her smile was back. That good feeling and the smile vanished as Sandra came back into the main part of the house. It was sheer knocked off her face by the pounding on the front door. She knew before she opened it that she'd be facing another argument with the most unneighborly of next-door neighbors, Vicky Lawson. "I saw that man," Vicky screeches as soon as the door opens. "I told you, you have no right to rent out any part of your house. It's against the neighborhood rules." "The rules you wrote and posted on telephone poles up and down the street," Sandra said, wearily. "Pretty sure there's a rule against that, for sure." "This is a residential neighborhood. You won't devalue my property." Sandra's eyes rose to take in the ostentatious McMansion Vicky called Manor Home. "I don't have your means, Vicky." "You will call me Mrs. Lawson." "You've called the police, the church, the school board, the local news. Everyone and anyone you think will listen to your tale of well-heeled, aggrieved so-called woe. If you had a case to make, they'd already have shut me down. I'm just a slightly above poor old widow. There you go. You've just about admitted you're ready for hospice. Pack it in and give us decent people back our neighborhood. This isn't about devaluing your overpriced, over-appointed home. It's about valuing yourself high, high above all the rest of us." Sandra closed the door, gently, even as Vicky railed. "I'll ruin you." Vicky stormed back down the walkway that led from the Coles' front door. She cursed as she almost tripped on a loose brick. "Don't you even care about upkeep?" she hissed. She stamped down the brick with her heels, stumbling backward as it suddenly pivoted up and popped loose. Checking her initial inclination to rage against the stonework, Vicky instead found her lips stretching out into a thin, wide, and totally icy grin. She reached down to grab hold of the heavy, destructive opportunity that had just presented itself to her. Calvin's fingers worked to assemble his creation, moving with speed and dexterity and delight. He had hoped just for a place to crash on his way to the Bonneville salt flats to run what he'd hoped would be final tests. He never expected this gift, a place to make the improvements he'd been musing on the long drive. He activated the servo motors and the mechanics flexed smoothly, open, closed, their tensile strength far in excess of what it would appear such tiny grippers could achieve. The propeller slipped easily into place. He attached the brain, the artificial intelligence guidance system that would direct his advanced drone to play games with its owner. Hide and seek, capture the flag, fetch. The brick shattered the glass and smashed into the side of Calvin's head. As he slumped into unconsciousness, the soldering iron in his hand slipped. The searing hot point of metal dissolved the circuits that constituted the drone's safety protocols. Out on the lawn, Vicky did a happy dance, secure in her self-righteousness. She even allowed herself a girlish twirl. So her back was to the greenhouse as the drone came crashing out. Shards of glass nicked the back of her head and neck, but the real pain came as the impossibly strong grippers on the bottom of the flying machine seized her hair and arms and began to ascend. "Fetch," the drone speakers warbled. Calvin winced as he opened his eyes, to find himself lying on the cot and Sandra cleaning blood from his forehead with a cool rag. In the far, far distance, Vicky's wailing screams dropped in volume as she rose high, high above everyone else. "What's that noise?" Calvin choked out. "Just the call of science." Thanks for listening to The Call of Science. Written and read by D.G. Chichester. Copyright 2020 by D.G. Chichester.